Living in strange times. There is a virus going around, like a secret terrorist. We don't know where it is, but people can be afraid. Even afraid of friends and family, because they might be unknown agents who will infect them. Is there anything we can do? The last really bad flu pandemic was the 1918 Spanish flu. Worldwide, about 500 million people got it. That was around a third of the entire world's population at the time. Of those who got the Spanish flu, between 20 to 50 million people died from it. Like the current pandemic, Spanish flu particularly affected the lungs. This meant that people struggled to breathe. There were no age barriers. Children, young people and old people alike got sick, very sick. Those who did not survive died very quickly. In the midst of such widespread tragedy, there are a few places where people had a better chance of survival. These included some military hospitals that were set up out of doors in tents, and also included the Seventh-day Adventist sanitariums and schools. Today, we are going to look at what made a difference in the 1918 Spanish pandemic and how we can draw on this experience to learn lessons that may help us today. Lesson number one of my favourites, is sunshine and fresh air. Some patients were placed in tents or open air due to the hospital system being overloaded, and there's some interesting things that came out from this. Records from an open-air hospital in Boston, Massachusetts suggest that some patients and staff were spared the worst of the outbreak. What do they put this down to? A combination of fresh air, sunlight, scrupulous standards of hygiene, and reusable face masks appear to have substantially reduced deaths among patients and infections among medical staff. That's pretty exciting. These are not just old-fashioned ideas. Paul Carlton is a professor from Texas A&M University. He advocates doubling the air exchanges per hour in hospital rooms. In his words, fresh air is a disinfectant. This kind of makes sense when you think about how stale the air can get and how it would be a good carrier for viruses and bacteria. Some good common sense here. What about sunshine? Studies have shown that ultraviolet radiation from the sun inactivates influenza virus. Very fascinating. A recent study found that low levels of blue light found in the rays of the sun make T cells move faster. In other words, they become more efficient and can deal with pathogens better. I think that's very exciting. I'd want to utilise that. Now, what do T cells do? T cells play critical roles in pulmonary or lung host defences against bacterial, viral and fungal pathogens. That covers a lot right there. In summary, fresh air and sunlight activate our defense system and inactivate viruses. This must have been one of the reasons that the open-air hospitals produced better results in the 1918 pandemic. Lesson number 2, water. Early Adventist doctors and nurses had a strong emphasis on water. Water is important in sickness and an important preventative of sickness. Dehydration causes our lymphatic system to be sluggish and impedes the work of the white blood cells, which are our important army. Patients were encouraged to keep well hydrated. And if things were not moving well like they should, they would use enemas. Because a constipated person cannot be well. They are poisoning themselves from the inside. And when they're doing this, they're less able to fight the real pathogens. Water in the form of warm herbal teas works well as a soothing cough and clearing out mucus. I've often done this and it's worked wonders for us. It is important that we all drink plenty of water to keep well hydrated in order to fight disease. Lesson number 3, another favourite of mine, diet. Another strong point in treating patients in the Adventist sanitariums was a good, simple diet. That advice is not outdated. Professor Tim Spector of King's College London, commenting on COVID-19, says, "One thing that you can control immediately is the health of the trillions of microbes living in your gut, collectively known as the microbiome. Recent research has shown that the gut microbiome plays an essential role in the body's immune response to infection and in maintaining overall health. The best way to increase microbiome diversity is by eating a wide range of plant-based foods, which are high in fibre and limiting ultra-processed foods, including junk food. Following a Mediterranean diet, which most of us know what that means, has also been shown to improve gut microbiome diversity and reduced inflammation. I think that's pretty exciting. Eating plenty of fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds and whole grains, healthy fats like high quality extra virgin olive oil, and avoiding things like alcohol, excessive salt, sugar, sweets, drinks and artificial sweeteners or other additives. Something important to keep in mind. What you eat affects the health of your gut microbiome, which is an important part of your immune system. Lesson number 4, sleep. This is one I think we all struggle with, and I was really convicted as I read some of these studies. In 1918, the Adventist protocol included plenty of rest. This often prevented pneumonia in those who didn't already have it. An interesting study in 2015, researchers in the US deliberately infected 164 volunteers with the rhinovirus, which causes the common cold. They found that people who slept less than 6 hours a night were 4 times more likely to develop cold symptoms than the ones who slept for 7 hours or more. So it sounds like we all need to make sure we get plenty of rest. Sleep helps your body rejuvenate and is very important for fighting off infection. So as this virus is going around, let's make sure we're all getting enough sleep. Lesson number 5, and this is one that people don't often think about, but keeping warm. Keeping patients warm was a very important aspect of the Adventist treatment. Why is this so important? As we have learned earlier, we want to be in a fresh, airy room, but we must also keep warm. Our lymph, which contains our white blood cells, is affected by how warm we are. If we have cold parts of our body, there our lymph will be more stagnant. Many years ago, I worked at a lymphatic massage clinic and we found that most people were cold. We would put them in the sauna before starting treatments on them. What can we do to help our lymphatic system? This is a system where most of our white blood cells are to be found, and they're important. They're our army that help fight against bacteria and viruses. Dressing evenly is a basic first step. Making sure each part of our body is warm, things like our arms, our legs and our feet, very important. Exercise will help keep us warm and push our lymphatic system along, which is so important considering the heart does not pump out lymph fluid. It's dependent on how warm you are and you moving around. Enjoying the sunshine is a great way to get nice and warm also. It's often forgotten, but keeping warm keeps your circulation even and your body is able to easily mobilize its defenses, which we want to have up and running and in the best of shape. Lesson number 6, which is a fascinating lesson, and that's hydrotherapy. Dr. Joyce Cho tells us, when the Spanish flu had been contained, 10 different Adventist sanitariums gathered their data on over 1,000 patients. Of these, about 670 were outpatients who went home to treat themselves, and about 450 were inpatients at the sanitarium. For those who were outpatients and self-treated, the mortality rate was around 4%. For inpatients, the mortality rate was less than 1%. I think that's just amazing, considering that the mortality rate for those infected worldwide was between 10 to 20%. These statistics are very amazing and offer much hope. What had the Adventists done that nobody else had done? What was their secret? It was called hydrotherapy, amongst the other things we've learnt that they did, also known today as hydrothermal therapy. Some doctors are remembering what was done in the past. One exciting thing I recently came across was one doctor, Dr. Eric Nelson, who's currently running a hydrothermal therapy trial at Erlanger Medical Center with COVID-19 patients. I think it's going to be amazing to see the results of all that when that comes through. What does hydrotherapy do? It increases our metabolism, the number of circulating white blood cells, their activity and productivity, and the elimination of waste products. The lymphatic vessels contract when exposed to cold and dilate in response to heat. So it makes the whole lymphatic system so much more efficient, and also gets blood going in and out thoroughly and getting that working well. Dr. Agatha Thrash, who was an expert in hydrotherapy, she noted that raising our body temperature to over 38.8 Celsius kills or inactivates viruses, something very handy to know, and a useful weapon we have up our sleeve. What can hydrotherapy do in times of sickness? Here's an interesting story that I found in a report by Cheryl Hosford. She tells about her grandfather. My grandfather, she says, Paul Stuyvesant, had graduated from nursing school at the Hinsdale Sanitarium in Hinsdale, Illinois, near Chicago, the previous year. He moved down to Collegedale, Tennessee to help with building a new school, Southern Junior College, and to help as a school nurse for the male students. The school had moved to a new location and they were having to build all the buildings on a very limited budget. There were no dormitories built yet, so the young male students were living in tents that had very little heat. This particular fall, there were 2 exceptionally bitter cold storms that came through, dumping 18 inches of snow onto the ground, which is very unusual for that area, so they weren't used to that kind of cold coming through. This was in October, at the height of the pandemic that was going around. The college students started coming down with the flu. Oh dear. As a nurse for the young man, he set to work providing hot water treatments known as fomentations. He was given a tent and an assistant, and 2 of them worked tirelessly to care for these sick men. Not one of these students died under his care, even though their living situations were far from ideal. This is especially remarkable considering the very high mortality rate of this pandemic. Oakwood College in Huntsville, Alabama was also hit hard with the epidemic. My grandfather, she says, and his assistant travelled there and provided treatments to those who were sick. Once again, God blessed the treatments and their efforts. Not one of their patients died. They then returned back to Collegedale, where the flu had returned. Again, they treated the sick with success. During this time, both my grandfather and his assistant became sick with the flu. My grandfather recovered, but his assistant died. For the rest of his long life, my grandfather regretted that he'd not been able to help his assistant to recover. Notice that at the schools they didn't lose a case. But when grandfather and her helper got sick, there was no one to care for them. Grandfather Paul was able to pull through, but his helper wasn't. Hydrotherapy helps the white blood cells do their work efficiently and it inactivates viruses. It's an effective, simple type of remedy that has been used successfully for generations. We should all become more familiar with hydrotherapy. Some of the resources that you may already have on your shelf include books like Practical Home Healing by Margaret Wright, or the Natural Remedies Encyclopedia, or the old book Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. These are great places to start. We have looked at 6 lessons from those who were successful in battling the Spanish flu pandemic a century ago. I hope that today we can educate ourselves, firstly, to take care of our health for ourselves and those around us, and secondly, learn the practical skills of how to help those who are sick. Maybe some lives can be spared by this knowledge. God's ways always work and never grow old. As it says in 3 John 1:2, Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health. Join us again next time for more on optimal health and well-being for you and your family.